It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
On with a special guest, Mr. Julio Rivera, yesterday, just to talk a little bit about some of these national issues we're hearing about with, President Donald Trump. And, of course, he announced his Supreme Court pick of Brett Kavanaugh. When I recorded this with Julio, we did not yet know about this really amazing pick, so we do have a little reference in that. But listen to this. Take a listen to just meet Mr. Julio Rivera. Take a listen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. This is Conduit News Radio. Good morning to you. I would like to introduce you to Mr. Julio Rivera. He is calling in right now. He's on the phone. Julio, welcome to the program, sir.
Hello, and how are you today, sir?
I'm doing good. I've got your website up right now. It's called reactionarytimes.com. I'm going to show that to our audience right now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the website before we get into some of the news of the day?
Well, we cover all the major news stories going on, obviously with a political slant towards conservatism. We're a right-leaning site, and myself as editorial director and our many contributors are all, for the most part, far right-leaning. So a lot of the editorials that we get from people like Cindy Gross and David Weissman and people like that are all, conservative-leaning editorials.
Well, yeah, I am looking on the website right now. It definitely seems to be kind of right up my alley. The reason I wanted to have you on, Julio, is because I know you've been following a lot of what I guess maybe 2 weeks ago you had Maxine Waters. I pretty much think she was, inciting public violence against Trump cabinet members. We have, a poll here from the Washington Examiner about how 59% fear violence, from people who are, maybe Trump haters, against people who are going to support or do support President Trump and the things that he does. What are your thoughts on where we are today?
I think that we're in a very dangerous time in our history here in America, and it's unfortunate. I think it's manufactured. I don't think that the sentiments of the average citizen are so polarized in that way against Donald Trump. I think that I think you turn on your television and they're telling you that you're living in Nazi Germany now. It's all this ridiculousness, and it's an orchestrated thing. I mean, you have Democratic leadership in concert with the mainstream media and all their cronies there that are far left-leaning liberals that want to go ahead and sort of manufacture this outrage, pretending that Donald Trump is doing this horrific job and that he's, all these things that he isn't. But, I mean, the truth is they've got to do that, or they feel they have to do that to mask, their own failures as a political party. Because if you look at the traditional demographics that, as far as who generally would be a Democrat, you look at, Latinos, you look at blacks, you look at women, look at the employment numbers. Employment numbers are through the roof. We're almost at full employment. Historic lows in unemployment for blacks and Latinos under Trump. So, economically, everyone is doing well, in the Trump economy. You look at, the comprehensive tax reform, giving a raise, in essence, to about, what's being estimated between 80 and 90% of Americans. So the Democrats at this point, what's their platform? I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to raise taxes, and they think that's going to resonate with the working class American? So what do they do? They go ahead and they create all these boogeymen. Oh, well, Donald Trump is separating families. He's doing all these horrific things. Well, guess what? All those policies were started under President Clinton and continued up through Barack Obama. If anybody addressed it or has attempted to address it, it's been Trump. And the Trump movement, in a large way, was formed off of the need, Americans wanting to see comprehensive immigration reform. At this point, Trump has been hamstrung by a Congress. Unfortunately, he cannot legislate from the White House. He does need a bill to sign that will address these issues. But again, I think, unfortunately, politicians on both sides of the aisle have not wanted to address something like immigration, due to the cheap labor and things like that.
You mentioned manufactured outrage. We were just showing a headline up here on the website. Protesters disrupt immigration agents with encampments across the United States. I think this is only going to get worse, Julio, in terms of the desperations. Like you said, they don't really have a record to run on, and they are alienating, I think, most of flyover country and, people who are conservatives. But when you look at these, for example, sanctuary cities, and you look at how there does seem to be a coming conflict between the federal government and sanctuary cities. I've heard it compared to what Ronald Reagan had to do with the air traffic controllers, when they were going on strike, and they were just essentially it was a moment where, President Reagan had to stare down what was thought to be just this, immovable force. Do you think we're going to see something similar like that with the sanctuary cities that continue to basically ignore our federal immigration laws?
Well, I think ultimately, we took a good step. I think with Jeff Sessions filing the federal lawsuit against the state of California. I think that what we need to do ultimately is go ahead and give an ultimatum where it's going to be either you're going to enforce immigration law, or we're either going to, quite frankly, arrest these politicians, people like, the mayor of San Francisco, the mayor of Los Angeles, Jerry Brown. These kind of people need to be held to account to it, or we're just going to we're going to pull your federal funding. I don't see why we haven't already done that. It's crazy. We're living in a country right now where we're kind of being torn apart by, I think, this scourge of illegal immigration, especially in, let's say, a big state like California, where right now, there's a mass exodus. People are just rolling out of California in record numbers. People don't want to live there anymore. It's not safe. The taxes are too high. It's kind of, there was I believe an article that came out that stated that the country with the worst quality of life, the state with the worst quality of life in the country now has become California.
Wow.
Wasn't this supposed to be like the liberal utopia? Aren't they supposed to, embody that in full? They're supposed to be like the perfect example of what, a left-leaning America is supposed to look like, and people don't even want to live there anymore. So, what I would do if I was President Trump would certainly be to put the pressure and ramp up the pressure on a place like California. I know where I'm from, New Jersey, we just elected Phil Murphy as governor, and he wants to turn New Jersey into a sanctuary state as well. So I would like to see, Trump make an example out of this before it gets out of control in a place like New Jersey where I live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course, this whole concept of what else the left might do, in the coming weeks or the months of the summer, it does seem like we have, in some cases, I saw this Daily Caller montage video where, you have all these people in the media calling for people to get out in the streets. And I'm wondering, with the Supreme Court pick that President Trump is going to make, what else will be used? It seems like any little thing that Donald Trump does, and I know it's a consequential thing that he's about to do when it comes to the Supreme Court pick, but you just got to expect the media is going to try to capitalize on this to try to mobilize. And then, of course, you do have, like we said earlier, the Maxine Waters of the world, who are basically, encouraging people to surround people that they have political disagreements with, and where you can't be served in restaurants or you can't even get gas. It's very frightening to hear that kind of rhetoric, and considering the fact that you had Steve Scalise get shot at a softball game. And yet it seems like the media just kind of ignores the rhetoric, the level that the rhetoric has got to, and the real world consequences that can produce.
Yeah, at this point, I think that it's very wildly irresponsible, that the media goes ahead and continues to perpetuate this, because it's all fake. At the end of the day, the country's doing well. I think the country's getting the promises that were delivered on the campaign trail by Donald Trump. He's actually following through on them, with the economy getting better. And then, that's the last little stand that they have is to kind of create this manufactured division within the country. And it is wildly dangerous. Listen, Maxine Waters should be censured by Congress. I mean, these are her colleagues last year at a congressional baseball practice, before they have the, I guess the Republicans versus the Democrats have that yearly baseball game. Before, they had it, and then, obviously we know that a whacked out leftist, a Bernie Sanders supporter, goes out there and shoots it up and, almost takes the life of, Steve Scalise. This happened very, very close to home to her. This is something where very easily she could have been involved in something like that and gotten shot herself. And for her to not, to think a little bit better and be a little bit more responsible with her words is wildly irresponsible. I mean, and I'm expecting, I think that they, more or less the media is going to continue to keep on, talking in this manner and going ahead and giving a lot of coverage to this type of stuff. And I would not be surprised if this summer there is a lot of violence in different cities, as a resistance to Trump, more or less along the lines of what we saw when he was campaigning in 2016, where we saw like the rally in Chicago that was disrupted by organized protests by MoveOn.org, where there was violence carried out against women and men, and it led to, that campaign rally having to be canceled, actually, which is, basically talking about the suppression of free speech, and that's true fascism. Yeah. And that's what the left is pushing right now, because they can't really push any positive policies. So what they're doing is just going to go after, go after the supporters of the opposition.
Yeah, I would just caution, everybody out there listening, if you are an open Republican or an open Trump supporter, you definitely need to be aware of the tactics and the potential out there, for harm. I mean, here in Arkansas, for example, we put up a 10 Commandments monument and we had some leftist drive a car onto the Capitol grounds and run it over. I mean, it's people, they're very, willing to do things as a form of protest that are illegal and breaking the law, not in the, the peaceful type of protest. So we all need to be careful. And Julio Rivera, I really appreciate you coming on the program, and I'll give you the last word, sir.
Okay, well, I mean, in 2018, this is going to be a continuation, I feel, of something that was started in response to Barack Obama in 2008 when we saw the Tea Party uprising. We saw the midterm election in 2014 go big Republican. We saw Donald Trump win the presidency. The Democrats are a dead, desperate party, and I think that's the reason why they're taking this dangerous tact against, the average American citizen nowadays.
All right, Julio, I appreciate it, from reactionarytimes.com. It's nice to meet you, sir. I appreciate your thoughts this morning.
Thank you so much, and God bless.
All righty, folks, we got to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.